My name is Dr. Elara Keene. I'm 34 years old. I've been a licensed trauma therapist for 11 of them, and I've always believed in pain, not in the way sadists do, but in the way scientists do, as data, as a symptom of something worth investigating. Pain tells the truth, even when people can't. For years, I treated it the way I was taught: talk therapy, somatic tracking, EMDR for the deeply fractured. You'd be surprised how many people are walking around with a minefield wired into their nervous system. All it takes is a word, a scent, a sound, and they're reliving the worst moment of their lives like it never ended. But now I have something else. I found it 2 months ago, buried in a locked cabinet in the basement archive of the clinic where I sublease my office. The cabinet wasn't labeled, just tucked behind old neuroimaging reports and rejected grant applications. I had no reason to be down there, other than mild curiosity and a power outage upstairs that made my laptop useless. Inside the drawer was a case, velvet-lined, sealed with a clasp, no markings except for a sticker on the inner lid. Nemos, clinical tool, consent required, never self-administer. I remember staring at that last part for a while, never self-administer, which meant, of course, that someone had tried. Inside the case was a device the size of a paperback, heavy, smooth steel, no visible buttons, just a touchscreen, a circular biometric pad, and a slender input cable like an EEG lead. No manual, no paperwork. But tucked underneath, folded into quarters, was a faded note written in careful, looping script. Do not restore what you cannot hold. Pain leaves a vacancy. If you remove it, you must replace it with truth, or it will return as something else. I took the device upstairs, told myself I just wanted to understand it. That was the first lie. The second came 2 weeks later when I used it on a patient named Vanessa. Vanessa had been with me for nearly a year. She was quiet, brittle, and unbearably polite. She always apologized before crying. She often brought coffee she didn't drink. But what stuck with me most was how she never used words like hurt or violated, only silence. Until one session, she said, "I need it to go away." She meant a night she barely spoke of. One night, one hallway, one locked bedroom. She said it like a confession, like she'd already sentenced herself to live with it forever. I didn't ask twice. I explained the process. I said I had a tool that could isolate neural trauma and potentially sever the associated memory from her autobiographical timeline. She didn't blink. She signed the waiver without reading it. All she said was, "Please." That night, she returned for the procedure. Memos scanned her during REM sleep, tracking her brain's emotional peak and mapping the neural network where the trauma was encoded. The interface showed a cluster of memories glowing in red and gold. One thread pulsed brighter than the rest. The target. Cut. Event cluster 219B. Confirm? I hesitated, then tapped yes. The screen went white. The next morning, she looked 10 years younger. She blinked slowly, smiled at me like we'd just had a cup of tea, and asked if I liked dogs. She didn't remember the bedroom, not the hallway, not even that it was night. Just peace. Manufactured, but real. I told myself I would only use it for extreme cases, for people who couldn't live inside their own minds anymore. I created a separate logbook. No names, just codes and dates. One use per patient. Each edit stored on a secure external drive, locked in a drawer only I could open. But here's the problem with playing God. The first miracle makes you feel like a savior. The second makes you feel like it's owed to you. By the sixth, I stopped asking myself whether I was doing the right thing. I started asking how deep I could cut. But it wasn't until the headaches started that I realized something was wrong. They weren't ordinary migraines. They pulsed in strange patterns, sharp, rhythmic, like an alarm clock buried under my skin. Then came the memory lapses. Small things at first. I forgot the name of the diner I ate at every Tuesday. I lost a full afternoon once and found myself standing outside my old grad school, holding my keys in my hand like they belonged to someone else. I thought it was stress, until I woke up with blood under my fingernails and a faint ache beneath my left ear. I went to the mirror. That's when I saw it. A scar, thin, clean, pale against the skin. I had never seen it before, never felt it. It wasn't in any of my medical records, but the moment I touched it, something inside me twitched. A vision, just a flicker. A room with white walls, a chair with straps, a child's voice crying for someone to turn it off. Then it was gone. The next day, I ran a scan of myself through Memos. I didn't expect to see anything. I hadn't used the device on myself, at least not consciously. But the screen blinked, then displayed a message. User history detected. Profile, Curator 01, Elara K. Session count, 14. Last edit, unknown. I stared at the screen, then at the scar, then back at myself. And in that moment, a single question rooted itself in my mind, cold and immovable. What have I already erased? The morning after I found my name in the Mnemos database, I didn't go to work. I called every patient on my schedule and canceled their sessions without explanation. My receptionist asked if I was sick. I said, "No, I just need a day to remember." She didn't get the joke. I set up the device in my bedroom this time, not in my office, not under fluorescent light, but in the only place I still felt safe. I closed the curtains, turned off my phone, and made sure every door was locked. Then I laid back, let Mnemos scan me. No dreams came, but the machine beeped. A new message appeared. Sessions fragmented, system recovery recommended. And then, memory trace recurring, unresolved thread, patient AR. I hadn't even entered a name. The device pulled that one on its own. AR. I didn't recognize the initials, so I did something I told myself I'd never do again. I pulled up my black book, the one with all my memory edits, the off-record patient logs. There was no AR listed there, but Mnemos showed a file. Alex Reeve, 32, referred from clinical trial at St. Selene Neurological Institute, presenting issue, false memory syndrome. I had no recollection of treating him, and yet the machine was absolutely certain we'd had 3 sessions. I felt sick. I opened the folder and saw video. There I was, sitting across from a man in his early 30s, unshaven, pale. He looked like he hadn't slept in a decade. "Why do you think you're here, Alex?" I asked on the screen. His voice was hollow. "Because you said you'd help me forget." Then he looked straight into the camera. "Or maybe to help you remember." I closed the video. My hands were shaking. I picked up my phone and typed his name into our records. Nothing. I tried Google. A few hits. A missing persons report from 5 years ago, a blurry photo in an old clinical trial database, and then my heart stilled. An image from St. Selene's. A younger version of Alex, maybe 10 years old, standing beside another child. A girl with wide eyes, long dark hair. My hair. The caption read, "Test Group B, Curator Protocol in progress." I zoomed in. There was something behind her left ear, a surgical scar, identical to mine. I didn't sleep that night. The image of the girl next to Alex haunted me. Eyes too wide, body too still, like she was afraid to breathe. And that scar, I couldn't stop staring at it. I dug through my own childhood photos. I only had a handful. My adoptive parents weren't sentimental. Most were school portraits, and none were before age 6. but one photo stopped me cold. It was a group shot, first grade, lined up outside our school building. I was in the middle, holding a paper sunflower. But behind me, blurred in the background, was a boy with sad eyes and a mop of dark hair. The resemblance to Alex was unmistakable, but it wasn't just that. It was the look between us. We were facing away from the camera, but looking at each other, like we knew. I took the image and enhanced it using an app, focused on the reflection in the school window beside us, and there it was again, the scar. The next morning, I called every number I could find connected to St. Selene. Most were disconnected. The institute had been shut down after an anonymous tip exposed its unethical testing on children with PTSD and dissociative disorders. But one email domain still worked: archives@nemesenelab.org. I sent a blank message. 30 minutes later, I got a reply. Dr. Keene, we've been expecting you. Archive access, code 7. Use the passphrase. Curator returns to complete the loop. I sat there, frozen. This wasn't coincidence. Someone wanted me to find this. I drove 2 hours north to what remained of the Mnemosyne Institute. It wasn't on any current map, but I found it, tucked into the woods off an abandoned access road. The building was skeletal, burned out in places, but the basement was intact. The keypad at the entrance still had power. I typed code 7. A pause, then the screen blinked. Welcome back, Curator 01. The door opened. The archive room smelled like rust and dust. Racks of old equipment lined the walls, most covered in sheets. I found a console still intact, connected to a database labeled Neural File Bank, Child Cohort B. There were 8 names. One stood out. Reeve, Alex, Subject ID B03. Keene, Elara, Subject ID B01, Curator. Each entry had logs, session videos, memory maps, neural loop charts. I played the first video under my own name. The screen flickered, then lit up. A younger version of me, maybe 6 or 7, sat in a padded chair, a headset on my head, wires trailing down my back. A voice off camera spoke. Elara, where is the pain today? Young me responded with something that made my blood go cold. Inside him. Who, sweetheart? The boy. The one I give it to. The screen went black. I found Alex's file next. In one video, he was older, around 10, staring blankly at a white wall. A woman asked him if he felt safe. Only when she's not screaming, he said. Who's screaming? The girl. The one you put in my dreams. I slammed the laptop shut. It didn't make sense. None of it did. But part of me knew it was true. We weren't just patients. We were paired. They had made us share the pain, transfer memory back and forth to see what would stick, who could hold what, who would forget first. I was curator because I could edit the memories, store them, move them. They trained me young. And then, at some point, they made me forget. When I returned home, the MMNS device was blinking. New session request. Patient, Alex Reeve. Status, emergency. The message read, they're back in my head, and I think you are too. I reached up, touched the scar. This time, I didn't flinch. Whatever they put in us, it was still active, still syncing. And something told me this loop wasn't over yet.
The next time I saw Alex, he wasn't the man from the videos. He looked gaunt, as if the nightmares had started feeding on him. He sat in my waiting room like a ghost that hadn't decided whether it wanted to be seen. When I opened the door, he looked up at me. The dark circles under his eyes weren't just from insomnia. They were memory bruises, deep ones. It's happening again, isn't it? He said quietly. I nodded. He followed me into the office and closed the door behind him like someone who had done it 1,000 times before. But I had no recollection of ever letting him in. He sat down, looked at the Nimos device resting on the table. "You said it would stop when we grew up," he said. "I don't remember saying that." "You don't remember a lot." I pulled out the scan port and offered it to him. He didn't hesitate. He pressed his finger to the pad, and Nimos began recording. On the screen, a neural map bloomed like a bruised flower. Memories clustered in tight, hot knots. 3 pulses glowed red. Interference detected, multiple memory origins. Source overlap. Curator 01. That was me. The device thought my memories were inside him. "I've been dreaming of the room again," Alex said. "White walls, bright light. The girl's always there. She cries, but no sound comes out, and I just keep watching." He looked at me, and last night, she turned around. I didn't want to ask, but I did. What did she look like? You. The rest of the session blurred. I ran a secondary scan on myself after he left. The device flashed the same interference alert, traces of external memory. Not mine, Alex's. We were bleeding into each other again, just like before. I found another file in the archive, one labeled Merge Test 02. Inside, documentation of experimental trials pairing child subjects with complementary memory profiles. The theory was simple and horrifying, that trauma could be halved if distributed across 2 neural pathways. They didn't erase our memories, they spliced them. That's why we couldn't heal. That's why he saw my pain, why I sometimes dreamed of his. It was all one system, one loop. We weren't separate people. We were twin cores of the same memory engine. I sat alone in my office long after dark, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I meditated. I slowed my breathing, let myself drift, not to calmness, but to memory, real memory, unfiltered. And it came. The white room, a place that had no shadows, a place so quiet you could hear your own thoughts unravel. I remembered the door, and the man with the clipboard who asked me, "Do you feel the weight lifting?" I remembered looking to my right and seeing Alex, curled in the corner, clutching a stuffed animal with half the fur burned off. We weren't patients, we were instruments. Each session, they asked me to hold his memory so he could rest. Each time, I screamed when they pulled it back. And when it hurt too much to scream, I stopped remembering at all. I woke with tears dried into my temples. The Nimos device was still on. A message blinked on the screen. Curator Memory Bank unlocked. Do you wish to merge full history? Yes? No. My finger hovered, then withdrew. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I would be. And when I was, I'd finally find out who I really was. Not just the one who edits pain, but the one who remembers all of it. The moment I pressed yes on the merge prompt, the lights dimmed. Not in the room, in me. It wasn't like flipping a switch. It was like drowning in fragments. Colors, voices, dates, screams that echoed in triplets, touches that weren't mine, and thoughts I never formed. But somewhere in the flood, I found her, the original version of me. She wasn't 6 or 10 or 34. She had no age, no voice, just a core of unbearable clarity. She held everything I had tried to edit out. She showed me the first session. I watched as a needle slid behind my left ear. A screen beside the chair blinked once. A new line of code appeared. Curator 01 online. In the background, someone clapped. I came to hours later on the floor of my office. My head was pounding. My fingernails were cracked and bleeding, like I'd tried to claw something out of me. But I remembered now. Not all of it, but enough. The protocols, the first trial, the baseline edits, how I volunteered. Or maybe I was made to volunteer. The lines blurred. In one of the videos, I was maybe 8, sitting calmly while another child sobbed in the next room. I spoke to the camera. Today, I held 4 incidents for subject B03. I did not retain emotional overlay. Recommend integration efficiency 91%. I sounded proud, like I'd done well. But it was worse than that. I was training myself to disappear. There was a terminal in the archive's lowest sublevel. I hadn't dared access it before, but now I knew the password. Curator returns to complete the loop. The screen unlocked a file tree, decades of research, countless logs marked with patient IDs, and one folder labeled the Elara version history. I opened it. Inside were 17 memory logs, each labeled with a date, each authored by me. The earliest one. If you're watching this, then you found Mnemos again. You always do. You've already started editing patients. You think you're helping, but each time you use it, you erase more of yourself. Stop now before you forget this morning again. Another. Version 6 decided to retain empathy. Version 9 removed sibling memory. Version 11 attempted to sever trauma archive. Failed. Alex is bleeding through again. Version 14 was the most recent. Merged too late. Host memories unstable. Recommendation full reset. I sat in silence, the hum of the old hard drive ticking like a clock. I had done this before, many times. I had wiped myself, rewritten myself, trying to become a better healer, a better human, one without the stain of what was done to me or what I allowed done to others. But every time I deleted the pain, I lost the truth, and it always came back. Alex, the white room, the loop. I opened one final file. It was me, my current face, recording something right after a session with Alex. I looked tired, haunted. There's no clean version of me left, I said. There's only the one who remembers. If you're thinking of wiping again, don't. That kindness is what breaks us every time. Remember it all, even if it kills you. I closed the terminal, walked upstairs. The Mnemos device blinked softly in the dark. System stabilized. Final merge ready. Do you wish to integrate all versions? My hand hovered, but I didn't press it. Not yet, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to escape my memories. I was preparing to own them. I left the device blinking. All night, the soft pulse of its screen lit up my apartment like a second heartbeat. I didn't sleep. I didn't try. The merge wasn't just technical, it was metaphysical. If I pressed that button, I'd be integrating every version of myself, every error, every erased truth, every sin. When morning came, I showered, dressed, and made coffee without tasting it. My hands shook, not from fear, but anticipation. There's a kind of clarity that comes before catastrophe. I walked back to my office. Alex was waiting outside. He didn't say a word, just stood there, clutching something in his hand. It was a small recorder. He handed it to me. You gave this to me when we were 12, said if I ever forgot who I was, I should play it. I took it, pressed play. My voice, young but unmistakably mine, came through the speaker. Alex, if you're hearing this, they've probably wiped you again. I don't know how many times it'll happen, but I need you to remember. I chose to carry it for you.
You were never weak. You just weren't made to hold fire. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. Do you believe her? I nodded. I do now. We sat across from each other in the session room, just like the videos. This time, I didn't set up Emnos right away. I just looked at him. I'm going to remember everything, I said. He nodded. And me? I thought for a long time before answering. I think you already do. He let out a breath. Maybe relief, maybe fear, maybe both. I opened the device. The prompt still waited. Integrate all versions? I pressed yes. The screen turned black. For a moment, I thought it crashed. Then, images. Dozens, hundreds. Flashes of faces, voices, data streams, pain. I saw myself strapped to the chair, saw a version of me laughing, another weeping, one who begged them to stop, one who asked for more. I saw Alex over and over, sometimes a child, sometimes a reflection, sometimes both. Then silence, and a single line of text. You are now version unknown. No further edits possible. I awoke in the chair hours later. Alex was gone. On the table was a photo. The two of us, children, sitting on the floor of the white room holding hands. On the back, he had written, "She remembered, so I can forget." I shut down the Emnos device. Not just powered it off. I pulled its memory, erased its drive, and burned the casing in a metal barrel behind the building. Some tools don't belong in human hands. Some stories only survive if they stop being rewritten. And mine, finally, was whole. Not perfect, not healed, but real. No longer a curator of pain, just the woman who lived through it. The end. Subscribe to GNDR Studio for more psychological thrillers and identity mysteries.